Something interesting about ASD is if you get two people on the spectrum together, chances are they're not going to be very much the same. I mean, I think there's the autistic experience, and that's what I want to talk about, but as far as personality traits and interests and worldview goes, there's a big difference between autistic individuals, despite being under the same umbrella. The thing that's weird about this is the autistic experience seems to be very, very similar for a lot of people out there. That is, there's a similar treatment towards autistic people, and I just kind of want to talk about that a little bit because I think it makes sense with how human psychology works. At least neurotypicals, by and large, kind of categorize people in a very binary way. And let me give an example for that. If I ask most people, and this is probably not just a neurotypical thing, I should say that as well, but what does not tall mean? Most people will respond with short. That's not necessarily true. I mean, sure, if you're short, you're not tall, but if I'm average height, I'm also not tall, right? And that's usually not considered. Most people go to the polar opposite, meaning that if you're not something, you are this, despite having a lot of other options out there. And I find that that's probably why autistic people get treated the way they do, despite all being different, all of us, for the most part. You know, again, comorbidities are out there. I'm sensitive to sound, a lot of autistic people are, but doesn't mean I'm like every other autistic person. This is kind of how a lot of neurotypicals seem to kind of think. You're not neurotypical, you're like this. You can't get this, you can't do this, you don't know this. And yeah, I think it's just a lack of understanding because, you know, they don't even have to necessarily know you're autistic to do this to you. I'm sure if you tell them you're autistic, it can go a number of ways if they're educated or not in autism, but yeah, it just seems to be the fact that you're different. This is what results in a lot of the autistic experience past all the other stuff that we have. So I want to talk a little bit about what's going on with me and how I've struggled with socializing, because as far as being autistic goes, I do pretty good at making friends and maintaining friendships. It's a different story if I'm going through burnout, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So first and foremost, I do struggle with enunciating. Like, certain words are hard for me to say, and I'm sure a lot of autistic people can relate to this. There just seems to be something in my brain that makes it hard to say what I want. And really, there's a lot of autistic people who can understand language, but they're nonverbal. So it just is probably a fairly common occurrence in the autistic community to struggle with saying the words that you want, actually getting the words out. And, well, while I'm talking to people, I constantly have to plan out what I'm going to say. This is also a common thing. The autopilot is just not there for me. And so as I'm saying this sentence, I'm thinking about the next sentence. There's a lot of interference that goes on there, and inevitably I mess up on what I'm saying. Now, when I start to mess up, I get nervous and it gets worse and so on and so forth, a snowball effect. Also, if I'm not doing good that day, if I'm tired, it's more prone to happening. But point being, as I'm talking, I'm not just saying the words you're hearing me saying, I'm juggling a bunch of other things. I'm trying to keep my body language right, my facial expressions, my inflection. I'm trying not to be as monotone as I am, but, you know, it's just not easy. So there's a lot of dialogue that goes in the background. It's a lot of effort. It wears me out. So, like, it's not like I just want to avoid people all the time, but sometimes I'm like, I don't have the energy for it. I don't. It's like, I don't necessarily need to be a social pariah for me not to want to go somewhere just because of this. But if I'm going through burnout mode, sometimes I become a social pariah. Like, it really can just happen when you're struggling more to talk. It's just harder for people to relate to you. And I think this kind of highlights a big struggle in the autistic community, not just with our comorbidities. Having loud sounds wake us up at night, that's one thing. But I think the primary thing that makes having autism hard is the treatment from others. Because I don't think it's conscious, but a lot of times it just seems like the human brain isn't as good at logic as it thinks it is, And when we negate statements or realize somebody's not like us, that doesn't mean we know how that person is. That's all. Like, we just don't necessarily know how that person is. And really, that should be exciting. Like, imagine having a different species of human, Neanderthals, not really a human, but you know what I mean. Very, very similar to us, but different. It's almost like that's what we are to some degree. That's why we feel like aliens all the time. I feel like that should be interesting. It shouldn't be, oh, ew, weird. It's like, I'm making you feel uncomfortable. At least you know I'm not a psychopath or a narcissist, right? Well, no. They'll gobble up what the psychopath and narcissist have to say because, they're charismatic. They are a lot of things that they are, that they want to be, that matter to them. So, a lot of the times, it's not that you're a specific way, it's how you're not. That's what I feel like a lot of the times. And really, like, I said this, I think as far as an autistic person goes, and I'm not trying to throw shade at anyone, I'm fairly good at making friends, I'm fairly good at other things, and a big part of it has to do with the fact that I am athletic. I can skateboard. I do have other skills, so I don't know how much of my personality has to do with this. I think sometimes people overlook personality if they see other things, but at the same time, I don't think I have a terrible personality. I just have a different one, and I've always kind of just assumed that the fact that it's different, it's bad. And this kind of just leads into the next thing with autistic people and socializing having to mask. It's a lot of work. So I just alluded to the fact that as I'm talking, I gotta think through all the things I'm saying. This will do that. This will do that to you. You don't just get to talk. You just gotta stick to the script. Stick to the script. And it gets exhausting sticking to the script. It does. It's like, I don't really want to talk about the weather, but I guess I will. I guess I'll lie about not feeling good today and just say good. I guess I'll let you treat me that way because you're annoyed at something else and your emotions are telling you that I don't get to do that thing because I'll make you feel better about whatever it is. I'll listen to you as if you're the boss. I'll let you talk to me like I'm an infant, so on and so forth. It just kind of happens. Kind of happens more if you're going through a rough period. But over time, I just don't really want to be around it. I don't want to keep up the charade and just put all this effort in to placate you as a neurotypical person. That's what I mean by you. But it's like, when am I going to get some, can I get like a courtesy every once in a while? Like how I am? Can we maybe cater to that a little bit? We don't. And so over time, it just feels like this world was not made for me. It's a lot of effort to keep up with all these things, and sometimes I feel as if the rules are inconsistent. It's like you let them do this thing, and now I'm not allowed to do it just because I'm different. And that's all there is to it. At the end of the day, it's just because I'm different. So it's just, it can get hard to want to socialize. It can get really hard to want to. So it's not fun feeling like an alien. It's not. You want to feel like you belong somewhere, but oftentimes there just seems to be something in the way. So I don't know if there's anything necessarily wrong with me. It's just that I'm different, and I'm sure a lot of autistic people can relate to that despite being different in their own unique ways.